Hi guys. Alright, so I'm going to walk you through the activity, lesson, assignment, whatever you'd like to call it, that we're going to be working on for the next several days, okay? But it takes that long, so you can't neglect it and think you're going to belt it out in one day. Not going to happen. Alright, here we go. Let's just dive right in. LT7/8 is identifying psychological disorders and treatments. Within identifying psychological disorders, you have to be able to identify symptoms, causes, how it affects a person's life. And then treatments, you need to distinguish whether or not they need to be medicated, do they just need therapy, and what is the hopeful outcome from the specific treatments that you have chose. And so that is our assignment, is to just learn about a whole bunch of different disorders, look at their symptoms, their causes, treatments, and what the treatments should do to treat that disorder. Easy. All right, so learning target 7, to get here, go to home, scroll down to learning target 7. Once it loads, you are going to, well, let me just read this to you. We need to go over this, and I feel like I just need to say it. Learning target 7 is analyze how psychological disorders are diagnosed, okay? I'm going to quickly walk us through success criteria 1, which is describe the models used to explain how disorders develop, okay? This is going to be really quick. All right. So classifying behaviors as disorders. So they're the models that go into classifying, or like essentially identifying the things that lead up to the development of disorders, are categorized into 2 different models. We have the medical model, and that is 100% biological reasoning. So biological reasonings why psychological disorders develop, like pregnancy. It's a good one, right? A woman has a baby, but first off, the woman gets pregnant and carries this baby for 10 months. Over the course of those 10 months, the child is growing and tons of hormones are developing within that woman, the woman carrying the baby. When delivery happens, those hormones exit the body so quickly that the woman sometimes, consequences of that can sometimes lead to postpartum depression, right? So that's a biological explanation for why the psychological disorder, developed. Okay? Another good one is trauma to the brain. Think about Phineas Gage, the guy that lit off the explosive and it sent a metal rod through his head. Well, that traumatic brain injury led to psychological disorder. That is a biological reasoning for the development of a psychological disorder. Okay? What about hereditary? If a parent passes it down to you. Okay? All right. And then the other model is diathesis stress. All right. That is the happy coupling of biological factors and environmental factors, and they marry each other because they love each other, and they create the perfect situation for a psychological disorder to develop. Okay? Again, the diathesis stress model is when biological and environmental marry each other, and boom, the development of a psychological disorder. Like, let's say child is raised in a single parent household with a mom that suffers from major depressive disorder. There are periods of time where mom, when she's going through the depressive cycle, cannot get out of bed. Therefore, child lives in house where there are times where mom is not present, is not supplying the things that the child needs, and the child might even have to be helping out raising the other siblings, right? So mom has a disorder, and it could make the child more predispositioned to develop that depression, right? But then the child is growing up in this very, like, unstable household where there are periods of time where mom isn't present. Can you imagine living in that? And we're talking about the environmental here, right? The stress, the neglect, what's wrong with mom, the worry, the doubt. Is she going to be okay tomorrow? Is she going to be able to take me to this field trip? Who's going to feed us, right? So those things marry each other. And 20 years from now, that child is suffering from a psychological disorder, right? It's the happy marrying of those two fronts. All right. So again, that's causation. That's when we're looking at causes. Okay. When we move down, this just talks about how it's important to be compassionate for others for people who have disorders. It's important. Compassionate. Everybody has their issues. Everybody's human. Okay. And we all deserve respect and love. Love. Okay, all we need is love. All right, so how do we know if a psychological disorder is present? Right? Because we're looking at behavior, obviously. How do we know when that behavior tells us, ding, 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 there is a psychological disorder present here, or we need to evaluate if there is a psychological disorder present here, okay? And we do that using the UMAD criteria. I'm just kidding, UMAD criteria. All right, so remember, we're viewing behavior through a lens. We're looking at the behavior, and we're trying to say, is that behavior telling us that that person may be suffering from a psychological disorder? Is that behavior abnormal? And does that abnormal behavior indicate possible psychological disorder being present? That is what we use UMAD criteria for. Okay? So look at the behavior. Then ask yourself, is it unjustifiable? Is the thought, feeling, or behavior, does it not have a rational basis for occurring? And others may have a hard time understanding why the behavior is occurring. So we're like, why? Maladaptive is the thought, feeling, or behavior is destructive to oneself or others. This is when, you're starting to be violent. Not okay. It leads to noticeable interference in one's daily life, and it prevents them from living a normal life. Destructiveness could include anything that causes physical and internal harm, okay? Atypical behavior, the thought, feeling, or behavior is so different that it violates social norms and expectations, okay? And then finally, is it disturbing? The thought, feeling, or behavior is troublesome, concerning to some people, and it may even cause pain and internal distress. All right, so that's how we look at the behavior. All right, using UMAD. All right, let's look at scenario 2. A teenager missed school for 3 days. They periodically break into tears. They also find it nearly impossible to get out of bed in the morning. Although she cannot sleep for more than an hour or 2 at a time. She has no appetite and becomes nauseated when people urge her to eat. Well, let's look at her behavior, okay? Let's run it through the UMAD criteria. Is it unjustifiable? Having a hard time understanding what's going on, right? Okay. This came out of the blue. Nothing really happened that set this into play. Maybe it's unjustifiable. That's a tough one. Is it maladaptive? Is there an interference in the person's daily life? Absolutely. Can't get out of bed. It's not going to school. Missing school, which is a part of that girl's life. Okay? Atypical. Does it violate social norms and expectations? Absolutely. The expectation is that kids go to school every day. It's in 3 days, not being able to go to school. 3 days, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It gets worse. And is it disturbing? The thought, feeling, or behavior is troublesome and concerning. Well, sure, right? That person she's in internal distress. If she can't even eat, it's hurting her health and more than just her mind and her, body. Well, body, you know what I'm trying to say physically. Okay, but anyway, so that's how and we would look at this criteria and say, does this person need to be evaluated for a psychological disorder? And I would say definitely, because 3 out of 4, I feel like she placed with UMAD criteria. All right, let's go back. You guys know now the model that we use to explain disorders. It's the medical and the diathesis stress, which is the happy marrying of both environmental and biological things that cause the development of a psychological disorder. All right, your assignment is under success criteria 2. All right. Oops. This is what yours is going to look like tomorrow. It doesn't look like that right now, but it will. Go to number 7. It's going to say success criteria. Go to LT7 success criteria 2. All right, you're going to need to download both this disorder organizer and download this DSM-5 disorders. Okay, download both of these. You're going to write in this one. This is a resource. Okay, so we kind of went over this the other day, but this is the chart that you're going to fill out. Remember, here are the success criteria. We're going to look at symptoms, causes for disorders, symptoms of disorders, and then treatments. Okay, so when you fill it out, the first line, the first column is the name of the disorder, and that's when you pull up that DSM-5, and it has the disorders right here. So sure, anxiety disorder, but that's not the specific disorder. There's a plethora of disorders underneath that umbrella. Pick one. Maybe panic disorder. All right, and then so you just plop that in right where it says name. Next, you need to look for symptoms, signs. What is a person experiencing when they're experiencing panic disorders? Okay, symptoms: rapid heart rate, yeah, lack of sleep, mood changes, like super fast talking, hearing voices, thinking things are there, hallucinating. All of those are just symptoms. I just made all of those up, but you're gonna look that up. So whether you use the DSM-5, which kind of gives you a little teeny weensy a bit of information on it. If I were you, I would go over here and I would type in panic disorder symptoms. Okay, do research. Okay, go to 2 or 3 different websites, find the symptoms and fill it in. Next, you're going to go to causes. Remember, what are the biological internal causes of panic disorders, and what is the environmental factors that cause panic disorder? Like, not having a stable childhood. And so you're overly cautious. And so when anything happens that you don't have planned, you panic. It triggers you to start going through a panic attack. And then you're going to need to explain what a panic attack is underneath the symptoms, or how it affects your life, which is this 4th column. Okay, then what are some biological things, right? Like maybe there's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Okay.